In the Perspectrum podcast, we discuss controversial topics. Outside of this context, Michael and I are both working professionals. While doing this show, we are not acting as agents or representatives of our respective institutions, and none of the views that we express reflect the outlooks of our employers. So don't come to my office and throw toilet paper at me.
And I don't have an office, but don't come to my cube. Hello and welcome to the Perspectrum. I'm Michael Bloom.
And I'm Nathan Seelove.
And today we have a super special episode for you. We are doing a first Republican primary debate special. So we'll be focusing specifically on breaking down the primary debate. We're going to, this is something we've done in the past with previous debates, although not in a while because we've been debate free since, early, 2020?
Yeah, debate specials is something from the early days of the Perspectrum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sure is. Yeah, and it started with us watching the debate and having so much to say that it would take at least a whole episode to get through it all. We'll see whether that's true tonight, because
we're gonna try to keep it kind of short. Because for one thing, I'm getting a little sick. You might notice my voice is a little raspy, and also. And more importantly, because Starfield just came out.
I was going to say because in the hour and 40 minutes of talking that occurred, nothing was said. So that was going to be my main point. But we will break it down.
Yeah. Fun fact. There are approximately 300,000 legitimate criticisms of Joe Biden. And somehow the Republicans on stage managed to spend the entire time criticizing Biden and not mention a single one. I mean, Christie kind of stumbled on one, but he didn't criticize Biden the way he should have. Mm-hmm. Christie brought up the crime bill, but he used it as basically an attack on Joe Biden for supposedly not enforcing it enough on his son Hunter. Mm-hmm. So because the criticism was not, hey, you locked up a bunch of brown people, and instead it was, you didn't enforce this enough.
Yeah.
I'm not going to count it.
Yeah. Yeah, they kept missing. It was really funny. One other thing that I think approached a legitimate criticism but was very misleading was pointing out the number of border crossings that have happened under the Biden administration. Yeah.
Now, the reason why that number is so high is because Biden kept Title 42 up for so long. Mm-hmm. But the criticism of Biden was that he got rid of Title 42. So again, that also doesn't count.
Yeah, totally. Yes. Okay. So there's a lot going on here. Let's set the stage a little bit to talk about, for people that may not have watched the debate. So overall, we had, this was the first debate ahead of the Republican primary. So these are all Republican candidates for president on stage. We had a bunch of candidates, but one conspicuously absent, which is Donald Trump, who opted not to participate, which, I've heard a couple people, frustrated that he didn't participate, but ultimately, why would you? He's polling in, he's at 50%. He's been at 50% of the polls since mid-April. He doesn't get anything by being on stage debating these people. He's just assuming that he's the presumptive nominee, which is true at this point.
See, I disagree a little bit. Because he actually did see a drop in the polls after the debate. According to a Hill article, he dropped 6 points in a post-debate GOP poll. Now, that's 6 points from 50,000, but still, you are seeing it chip away.
Except, my thought is that they talked about Trump so little throughout the debate that's probably not due to the debate. And, maybe it's due to the debate, but my bet is that it's due to the Georgia indictment. Happened around the same time.
See, I don't think it is because, at this point, with all of the indictments that have already happened, if you're supporting Trump, I don't think you're I was with him when there was 3 indictments, but now that there's 4,
it's beyond the pale.
Honestly, I don't buy that. I think that it's because people saw that there were some alternatives, and some of them had things to say that they liked. I will also say, I think it's a real pansy ass move to not be there. Now, I know that some Trump sycophants are going to be like, oh, it was so macho. He's so macho. But no, like, the guy is a total fucking pansy. All right. He's seriously like, this is such easy fodder for any political opponent to throw at him that I find it crazy that he didn't take that opportunity. And also, it's Trump. He loves attention. He loves it. He craves it. He is so good at lobbing insults at random people. That's what made Republicans fall in love with him in the first place. They loved watching him on debate call Marco Rubio Little Marco and, criticize Jeb Bush to his face or, make fun of Rand Paul's looks. People loved that shit. All right. That's the shit that Republicans in the original primary loved about him. I think that this was a bad move. And if I'm a Trump advisor, I'd be telling him, yes, you're still in a steady lead, but honestly, if you keep missing these debates, your lead might start to chip away, and you don't want that. Like, I think he has much more to lose to not be at the debate than actually to be at the debate based on what the numbers were afterwards.
That's interesting. I mean, to be fair, that's a post hoc analysis of how the polls turned out after the debate. But so I think I agree for future debates, perhaps. Like for the first one, I think there's like so much uncertainty about the candidates and how well they'll perform and what they'll look like and how people will react to them that like I could see it being a good move to hedge your bets, especially because you're right. I think that it was like it would be a very effective, I think, attack on Trump to like call him out for not attending the debate and being like weak or scared or whatever it is. But no one did it. Yeah. Like they talked about his record a little. They talked about Jan 6. But no one called out the fact that he wouldn't come up there and debate them. And I thought that was a huge miss.
Yeah, look, Christie hit him hard on a lot of things, but and Christie's the one that has kind of been the, he's the kamikaze candidate.
Yeah, like, totally.
Let's call him what he is. He's the kamikaze candidate. He wants to try to sabotage Trump as much as possible.
Yeah.
I do not think that he in any way thinks there's a reality that exists in any of the in the multiverse in which he's actually going to get the nomination. But I think that doing his classic Christie insults at Trump really does miss the mark when you don't address the fact that the guy's too much of a fucking coward to even come on the stage in the first place.
Totally. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Christie in this debate. I think like I kind of was a little bit confused about his approach. It honestly seemed a little bit like he was confused about his approach.
Yeah.
Like he did like discuss Trump a little bit, but he kind of fell back on like a lot of like normal kind of old school Republican talking points about like government spending and stuff like that. And like he made a point about, your point, what you mentioned about Biden and the crime bill, and made the point that, Biden's not enforcing the crime bill against his own son, and how that was like a two-tier system of justice and all that stuff. And yet like he really like kind of held off on like discussing Trump very much until like the Trump segment, and then kind of really focused it on that piece. I don't know. I felt like he seems like a kamikaze candidate who's just up there to go after Trump and try to drag him down. And yet at the same time, like, in some ways it seemed like he was actually running. In some ways it just seemed like he was out there to like make his points about Trump. I don't know. I found him really confusing on the stage.
Yeah. Yeah. And the analysis afterwards, like the post polls, or the post debate polls are also a little bit confusing.
Yeah.
Because according to 538, a poll of likely Republican primary voters who watched the debate, a plurality of them said that Christie did the worst. But then again, in another poll from 538 of likely primary voters who watched the debate, whether or not they would consider voting for each of the candidate was compared before and after the debate. And Christie actually saw a jump from 18.2 to 22.1.
That's a pretty big jump.
All of the candidates who were on the stage saw a jump.
Well,
Trump saw a decrease.
Yeah.
But all of the candidates who were on the stage saw a jump. And Haley actually saw the biggest jump.
Okay, so that doesn't surprise me too much. And I think this is actually a super useful poll. So thanks for bringing this up, because like ultimately it kind of supports your point about Trump missing the boat by skipping the debate, although like he'll be able to presumably make that up in the future. But
yeah,
no one is deciding their choice for the primary based on this debate. There will be future debates. The caucus in Iowa, which is like the earliest decision that any voters will have to make, is not until mid-January. There's time for people to make up their minds. But to your point, it's going to be recognition. It's going to be demonstrating that you're like, that you can play with the big dogs. It's so much more about getting into the consideration set of voters, which is exactly what that question measures, than it is about trying to like be totally break out and like be their choice. So like now people are going to be paying attention to these people much more than they were before. And that's the big opportunity coming out of the debate. And it's really interesting that it's not actually surprising to me that all of them made progress, because again, it would be one thing if Trump was on the stage, but the fact that they have a huge front runner who wasn't showing up, and now people have other people to consider who they probably weren't thinking about before, like now that makes sense. I am actually also not surprised, having watched the debate, that Haley improved the most.
Yeah. No, I will say, like, I will have a million bad things to say about Nikki Haley because of all the things that I disagree with her on.
Yep.
But the one thing that I will definitely say is that she was hands down the most substantive candidate on that stage.
I completely agree.
She was the only. I feel like she was the only candidate that almost completely consistently actually had an answer that was policy based.
Yes.
Right. She did very little, grandstanding, like, oh, look at me, I'm for good things and I'm against bad things. The one exception was the moment where she was like, well, this is why, this is why Margaret Thatcher said, if you want to, what was it? If you want
something done,
if you want something talked about, send a man. If you want something done, send a woman. Something like that.
Yeah.
And like when I first saw that, like I was kind of like, oh, that's a very politician-y answer. But then it's like, I mean, she did bring things back to policy consistently throughout the debate.
Totally.
And all of the dudes on the stage were basically babbling about complete bullshit. Like the fact that there was an exchange between Mike Pence and Ramaswamy about like, are people upset and depressed about the current state of things? No, I think they're good. No, I think they're bad. Like, what the fuck why? Yeah. Why does this matter? Why is this a thing we are disagreeing about?
They literally had an argument. If you didn't watch it, you should, by the way. It's funny. Should. I watched at 1.5 speed. It didn't take that long. It's Totally doable. But they literally were debating on, like, Ramaswamy was like, no, we're in a dark moment in American history. And Pence was like, no, like, we need the people, the American people are fine. We just need a government that can live up to the people.
Yeah.
And like, it's like, one, that seems really out of touch. But two, you're literally arguing over perspectives with no facts of them. Like, you're not citing anything.
And the back and forth went on.
I know.
Like, what the fuck?
For a long time.
Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Who gives a shit? We're here to learn where you stand. And again, like Nikki Haley, I think she did a good job of not getting herself caught up in that. She did a good job of staying true to policy beliefs.
Yep.
And also showing a surprising amount of consistency. One of the things that you never ever see from Republicans is they'll blame Biden for the inflation.
Yep.
All right. And they're wrong about that, but they'll blame Biden for the inflation, and they'll cite specifically the stimulus package that he did as soon as he took office.
Yep.
But then of course they won't bring up the fact that Trump put in a stimulus package as well.
Two, and they were larger than the one Biden did. Yeah.
Yeah. And they'll just pretend that didn't happen. Now, it's wrong that those stimulus packages were the primary driver of inflation. The primary drivers were, of course, bottlenecking at ports of entry for supply chains, and also greedflation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
These corporations jacking up prices. Those are the actual causes of it.
Yep.
So Nikki Haley is wrong, but at least she was consistently wrong.
I know. Yeah. I was so surprised that she was like, it's not just about Democrat spending, it's about Republican spending too.
Yeah.
And all of these people voted to support those bills. I thought it was a really good point against everyone on the stage, especially because I think it was right before that, Tim Scott made the same disingenuous point that every other Republican has been making on this, which is Trump saved America with spending and COVID, and we did great, and we're really proud of that. And also Biden is causing all of this inflation with his COVID spending. And it's just like, you guys are lying to yourselves and everybody else. And I thought Nikki Haley's answer was really good.
She was showing consistency in terms of economic conservatism, and not just criticizing one package because Democrats did it and praising another because Republicans did it. Now, again, I would say that all of those packages were good. It's one of the few things that I give Trump credit for. So I completely disagree with her on that, but at least, at least she's consistently wrong.
Yeah, yeah, she definitely came across as the grown up in the room. Yeah. And it's one thing if your theory of this debate is that people should be differentiating themselves against Trump. She didn't really do that much. She didn't really talk that much about him. She didn't really go after his record. She tried to make the point that the voters will, quote, tell you that it is time for a new generational conservative leader, which is just not what's bearing out in the polls. It's not, no one believes that. And that was her strongest point about her case for her being president. But if your theory of the success in this debate is that you come across like a grown-up, you get people's attention, I think she did pretty well in that. Yeah, I think she did nicely.
And what's kind of interesting is the polls, like she saw the biggest jump. So in that poll that I was talking about earlier, about who would consider voting for her, she went from 30.2 to 46.7. She saw the biggest jump. And honestly, I was a little bit surprised by that because while I was watching the debate, I was thinking, okay, if I'm a Republican and I watch this, I would be thinking, yeah, Nikki Haley did the best, and I would probably be voting for Nikki Haley. Because for me, it's all about policy and substance.
Yes, yeah.
And I just, a lot of Republicans don't really care about that. So I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm probably thinking about this. I'm thinking about it this way. So there's a very good chance that most Republicans who watch this debate are not going to be thinking that way. Yeah. Most Republicans are probably going to think the opposite. She was too moderate. She wasn't sycophantic enough to Trump. She wasn't adequately proving her conservative credentials. Cause she was trying to bring everybody back to reality about abortion, saying that you're not going to pass these bans, like whether you agree with them or not, you're not going to pass them in the Senate. And I was hearing that and I was just thinking, I feel like a lot of conservatives are going to hear that and they're going to hate her for it.
Yeah.
I mean, she's right.
Yeah.
But they're going to hate her for that. But interestingly enough, I think that this does demonstrate that although there is still a major hunger for somebody like Trump who is completely unsubstantive and just about vibes, there is at least some level of desire in the Republican Party to move towards someone who actually is trying to accomplish their agenda rather than just make them feel good because they owned the libs. Yeah,
I think that's right. I think so. It is somewhat telling that, Haley went from polling around 3% or so prior to the debate, and now she's at in a total national average, she's at nearly 6%, which is awesome. Now she's still at the low end, but to double your overall polling, that's great. And to your point, she's in the consideration set for way more people than put her as their choice. And I think that's right. And I think one of the things you're putting your finger on is a little bit of the schism in the Republican voting bloc,
Yeah.
that the different people on the stage are speaking to in different ways. So someone like
Yeah.
Haley is speaking to, you know, like maybe the Trump curious or the DeSantis curious, or the, you know, previously DeSantis curious before he tanked his whole campaign. Like the people that are open to other options and looking for a conservative who isn't necessarily just the Trump show.
Yeah.
Now, I thought that was interesting to contrast to someone like Ramaswamy, who,
Yes, let's talk about Ramaswamy.
yeah, let's get into him. I have my most notes about him, which is interesting because he said so little of substance.
Yeah.
To someone like him, who's clearly trying to appeal to a Trump like / like evangelical, you know, base. He is trying to appeal to like the QAnon fanatic, Trump fanatic group of people, which is a potentially high risk, high reward kind of strategy. But it does seem like it has paid off. He's been like consistently increasing in the polls throughout the summer. And after the debate it made it up to like almost 10%, according to the 538 average, which is a huge amount of ground to make up for someone who is like a no-name candidate prior to that. And honestly, like, we can talk about his performance, but he spoke the second most of everyone on stage behind Mike Pence.
Yeah.
And he was constantly pushing himself out there to get attention. And again, that's largely a measure of success for like an early primary debate like this.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say, I think towards the beginning of the debate, I was impressed with his energy.
Yep.
I felt like he came in with the most amount of enthusiasm. And I think that he was one of the few people that I thought actually wanted to be on that stage.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and like for the first few, like he had this strategy where every time someone would insult him, like he would laugh at it. And like the first few times he did it, I was like, oh, that's kind of endearing. And then it just came all across as so fake.
Yeah.
Like, again, yeah, the first few times it's like, yeah, you know, fuck you, I'm just swatting that aside. But I feel like it's almost as if eventually it started getting to him. And he had to force it even more to the point where it sounded like a fucking serial killer was laughing.
Yeah. I thought he came across immature.
Yeah,
which is
I agree.
interesting because his whole thing
I
is
agree.
like trying to come across like not the like new but not green, and like capable but not an insider. And like I feel like between his laughing, he said at one point like, we're gonna have some fun tonight, like and just his like lightheartedness combined with his aggression, I thought he really just came out, and his interrupting and his constant like jumping in on things that weren't really referring to him. And like, I thought that overall he came across a bit petulant, a bit like he was throwing a bit of a tantrum on stage, and just overall just like not taking it very seriously, which like, again, like that might, like, I feel like that doesn't work if you're a voter that actually cares about the fact that the policies that these people on stage advocate for will like make or break your life.
Yeah. I would say, you know, he definitely did come across as a little bit more immature. I think he came across, I mean, in my mind, he came across better than DeSantis did.
Oh yeah.
Because, you know, polling disagrees with me on this. Okay. I'm willing to acknowledge that. But like, I don't know, DeSantis came across to me as just really flat.
Yeah, just like his poll numbers.
And just like, you know, Ramaswamy came across as like, definitely not flat.
Yeah.
But kind of out of control.
Yeah. A little manic.
And I think that, you know, I think that if you're the type of person that's looking for an out of control candidate, you already got it in Trump. So why would you, why would you go for Ramaswamy when you got Trump? I think that if Trump were not in the field, I think Ramaswamy would gain a lot more. But I mean, you know, people don't want the cheap knockoff, you know.
Sure.
They want Trump. And also, I mean, another thing that I will say, and this is not necessarily my analysis of what I think Republicans think. This was just my impression. Part of me wants to like the fact that he was calling out other people on the stage for being bought and paid for.
Yeah.
But he used it in contexts to make the most pro-elitist points you could possibly make.
That's such a good point. Oh my gosh.
Like the part that a lot of people are talking about is the part where he says, you know, I can say this because I'm the only one on this stage who's not bought and paid for, but the climate change agenda is a hoax.
Exactly.
And it's like, you have to be bought and paid for in order to think that.
Yeah.
And
Or
like-
you
and
have
like
to
I-
believe the advertising campaigns that they've been doing since the 80s, which means, no, you might not be bought and paid for, but you have
just-
been tricked.
Yeah, you have been tricked. And you know, and look, I would look into what investments does he have personally?
Yeah.
What are some of the things that he has invested in? You know, does he have investments in fossil fuel? Does he have you know, what industries is he personally profiting off of?
Yeah.
Because either there is, like, for someone like Ramaswamy, who is a financial elite, there's only two reasons why he would say something like that. Number one, it's because he's being bribed to do it. Or number two, it's because he is benefiting in some way from it. Like, the people that buy and pay for politicians are the fossil fuel industries that pay them to lie about science. Like, you know, it's he's right that they're bought and paid for, but, you know, not for the reasons that you think.
Yeah.
Bro.
Yeah, I also thought, like, so I think Ramaswamy's appeal, I think, works much better in long form contexts where he does come across as thoughtful and articulate, and, you know, he can make his arguments. In a debate context, he's more like his website, which if you go, I think we talked about it when we broke down his candidacy. If you go to his website, it's a bunch of bullets that are very aggressive and very short and don't make the argument. And so, like, something like the climate change agenda is a hoax line, which is like something from his website. You can see it everywhere.
Which got booed.
Yeah, it's difficult to make that argument when the question was, like, the question to the candidates was, like, how can you convince young voters that Republicans will take climate change seriously? And when, and
his answer is just,
and
fuck the environment.
We're not. His answer is,
Yeah.
we're not going to do that. And the moderators even listed a bunch of facts that are like, it's pretty hard to be like, yep, we've had the hottest oceans off the coast of Florida ever. And your response to that is climate change is a hoax. Like, he really did come across like he was a Republican from like 2010 and not one who lives on Earth right now.
Yeah. It's like, Ramaswamy, okay, here's what you're supposed to say as a Republican. In fact, exactly what Nikki Haley said.
Yeah.
You know, as a Republican, what you're supposed to say is climate change is real and people are causing it, but the current solutions that are being proposed by Democrats are inadequate.
Yep.
So we need to propose better solutions.
Yeah.
Now, that is a non-substantive answer because the actual Republican policies for fighting against climate change are. Yeah.
Well, to be fair, her solution that she talked about for fighting against climate change was make China and India do it.
Yeah.
Which is like,
I mean, that was something of substance, and that is a good point. And also, one of the things I will even say, as kind of a point in favor of some of the things that Republicans were talking about on stage, a lot of them did bring up the legitimate point that a lot of the resources used to make batteries are mined overseas. A lot of those batteries are created in China.
Yeah.
And that is a legitimate criticism of the electric car industry. That is, I mean, I think that the solution for that is we need to invest more into it.
Yep.
So that we can, try to get that in the United States and not in China.
And it doesn't land as a criticism of Biden, because that's exactly what the Inflation Reduction Act did was like invest in green jobs in the
Yeah.
United States. So
Yeah. Yeah. And also, the CHIP Act, which, helps to bring some of those chips that are used in electric cars to be manufactured in the United States. Like it's not a good criticism of Biden, but it's a legitimate criticism of the electric car industry.
Yeah.
Now, their solution is keep burning oil, keep burning coal, fuck the environment.
Yes.
But at least it's a substantive criticism.
yeah, I thought of Ramaswamy's point. He was like, I think it was in his closing statement. He said something like, fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. That was part of his closing statement. And I don't know who that's for and who believes that, because everybody recognizes that fossil fuels are a finite resource. So that's not a particularly compelling vision for the future when you say the key to prosperity in humanity is something that ends eventually.
Well, it actually does make sense though, because if we keep burning fossil fuels the way that we are, then the world and civilization will basically be destroyed before we run out of them to begin with. So it's fine.
Yeah, that's a great point. The end of the world is the key to human prosperity.
So it's, and look, I do give him credit somewhat for talking about nuclear energy as a potential as a potential solution. And he has, I have seen him do interviews in which he's been asked about, environmental stuff, and he's brought up like, hey, what about nuclear energy? Why are progressive activists always down on nuclear energy? And I think that, I think, if you listen to our episode about nuclear energy, kind of breaking it down, we acknowledge the fact that this could actually be a part of the solution.
Yeah.
It's not the full solution,
yeah,
but
totally.
But it can absolutely be a part of it.
It's also frustrating that in the context of we need to mine coal, frack, burn oil, the nuclear energy point is more of a hypothetical. Like, well, if you really think this is a problem, why don't we do nuclear? Because like his first and foremost, his answer is fossil fuels. So I think the last thing I want to say about Ramaswamy, aside, we've kind of subbed up his obnoxiousness. And I think that's disappointing to see him perform so aggressively on stage, I guess. The other thing I wanted to point out is he, despite the policies he named being aggressive, and he was probably the most extreme person on stage from pretty much every policy point he made. He is still leaving out some of the worst parts of his policies. Like his actual substantive policies are worse than the extremist perspectives that he was spouting on stage. Like he was talking about education, and he said, quote, every high school senior should have to pass the same civics test that, frankly, every immigrant, including my mother, had to pass in order to become a citizen of this country. But as we've talked about before, the part that he leaves out in that policy idea is that his actual policy is also that you don't get to vote until you're 25 if you don't pass that civics test. So he's just making a point about education and how we should all be aware of our Constitution and civics, but leaving out the fact that he thinks that should have a actual impact on your ability to vote between 18 and 25.
On top of that, he recently came out with a policy proposal that would basically make it so that there is no absentee voting. It's all same day. You have to do it in person. It's all paper ballots, which, okay, fine. And it's a national holiday, which, okay, fine. Like those last two. But basically no early voting at all. And as I've said plenty of times on this pod, anytime your electoral strategy involves trying to get less people to vote instead of trying to have better policies that appeal to more people, that is fascistic.
Mm-hmm. Of everyone on stage, Ramaswamy is a fascist.
Oh yeah.
His policy proposals are fascist. His whole thing is American identity, like the sanctity of American military defense at home, like a religious like the religious kind of enforcement, confinement to the nuclear family, like all of these kind of like extremely conservative.
Yeah, what the fuck was that
enforced-
pot shot at single parents?
I know that the
Like,
government like paying
what the
single
fuck?
moms to stay at home rather than work or whatever.
It's like,
or something
okay,
like that.
okay, let me
Or rather
let
than
me-
get married.
Let me get this. Let me
Ugh.
get this straight. Let me get this straight, you son of a bitch. Like, you're saying that, you know, the government should stop supporting single parents in order to try to incentivize them to stay in marriages, potentially with people that, you know, are terrible, that are unhappy marriages, or to potentially force you into marrying somebody who maybe you just had a one-night stand with. You think there should be a libertarian paternalistic approach to trying to get people to stay in marriage that are potentially not happy?
Yeah.
What the actual fuck?
And like, if you are a single parent who has your welfare or your benefits, you know, pulled out from under you by the Ramaswamy administration, right? And then as a result, you have to be shopping around for someone to help support you, right? Think about the fucking power dynamic at play here when you're like, oh, you're now the breadwinner. Like you're the, like, I have to stay with you and stay married to be able to afford to live and have a roof over my head and provide for my children. Like that is fucking insane.
Yeah, like it's already messed up enough that the Republican point of view when it comes to welfare is usually take it out from under people so that you force them to actually, you know, to get a job that maybe they don't like. He's taking that
able
step
to
further.
get like there's so many. Anyway,
he's taking that a step further and saying, pull it out from under you so that you force yourself into a fucking romantic relationship. Like what the hell, man?
Yeah, he is
like
by far the most extreme candidate I think we've seen in a Republican primary in a long time.
And also, can we talk about the fact that it wasn't just him that called for starting a motherfucking war with Mexico?
Yeah. What the fuck was... I mean, that was a fucking question from the debate moderators.
How is that even on the table? Like this shows you how far the Republican Party has fallen when it comes to the issues of the border. Like there was a time when the idea of building a wall on the southern border was an SNL parody of a Republican border policy.
I know.
Like, and people universally were like, you know, that was...
Tim Scott was like, it's only going to cost $10 billion. That's all we need to finish the wall. And then what? He was like, that'll stop the fentanyl. It's like, no, it won't. People are not running across the border with backpacks full of fentanyl.
Yeah. And look, I think the fentanyl thing that's an interesting thing to have a discussion about, and I think that we should do a deep dive into
figure out how to
fentanyl
solve
at some point.
For sure.
Like, yeah, but a wall ain't gonna do shit.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? But the thing is, it used to be that it was outside of the Overton window to talk about a wall because, you know, that's comically stupid. Mm-hmm. The idea of building a fucking wall on the southern border is comically stupid. Then Trump comes along, starts talking about it, starts getting people on board with it, even though it will solve nothing.
Yeah.
And it becomes a mainstream Republican talking point. And now it's the moderate Republican position, and the extreme Republican position is let's start a fucking war with Mexico.
Yes.
Let's send troops across the border into Mexico. Mm-hmm. Whether the Mexican government consents to it or not, which would effectively start a war with Mexico. You're talking about an invasion.
Yep.
You're talking about a fucking invasion. Like, now I'm thinking, oh my God, in 4 years, is that going to be the moderate position?
Oh my God. Yeah.
You know, what's the next extreme position? What is it going to be to fucking nuke Mexico? Mm-hmm. And the moderates are saying, no, let's just send over troops. All right, we'll just send over troops. That'll be the moderate position. Yeah. I'm reasonable. We're going to send over troops to Mexico. Jesus Christ.
DeSantis's fucking applause line was how cold and dead the drug dealers are going to be when his military shoots them across as they try to cross the border, which is like, we can talk about how bad drug dealers are. Like we can work on policies to like put in place, like fighting the cartels, all of that stuff. We should not be executing extrajudicial killings at the border and like having applause lines about how much murder we're going to be doing.
And also think about how stupid you have to be to think, well, right now, fentanyl is a very dangerous thing in the United States, and we need to protect Americans from the danger of fentanyl. And you know what's going to make America a lot safer from danger? Starting a war with our fucking neighbor.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to make America safer.
Yep.
Being in a war with our, with our neighbor on the southern border, that right there, that's going to make it a lot safer.
Yeah.
Because there are no border towns that might get caught up in the crossfire. That's not going to happen.
Wait, one last thing I did want to say about Ramaswamy, especially related to foreign policy. I thought, so there was this question that you may recall about that the moderators asked about continuing to fund the war in Ukraine and continuing to contribute to the Ukrainian defense. And during this exchange, like DeSantis and Ramaswamy were just like, defend America, defend the geographic, like America, blah, blah, blah. And, Pence and Haley were making the point about like supporting Ukraine is supporting America. Preventing Russia from attacking a NATO country is supporting America. Preventing Russia from expanding their geographic and political influence is defending America. And I thought they came across like so much the adults in the room relative to Ramaswamy and DeSantis, because it was like it was an interesting moment where DeSantis and Ramaswamy came across like total noobs with regard to foreign policy, which they are because they have no foreign policy background at all.
Yeah.
And they really came across like they didn't even really get what was going on.
Yeah. And like, look, I will say that, spending packages with no strings attached
Sure.
to Ukraine, like that's a policy worthy of potential critique.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that I think that we shouldn't be super cavalier about that. I'm not saying that we shouldn't support Ukraine. I'm saying that it is worth taking a closer look at the packages that we're giving to Ukraine.
Sure.
Now, what I will also say is I think that it's smart policy to support them peripherally and not attack them ourselves, because again, that would start World War III. But I think that there's definitely some criticisms a reasonable person could make of Biden's Ukraine policy.
Yeah.
What DeSantis and Ramaswamy said, we should focus our military on Mexico instead of Ukraine. That ain't it. That ain't it.
Agreed. Okay, so all right, we are barely making it through this list of this incredibly full stage. All right,
let's talk about Pence. Talk about Pence.
Yeah.
So Pence,
I've got literally 2 bullet points about Pence because he's nothing.
I realized something about Pence, and it actually made me realize something. And I'll explain this later, but it actually made me realize something about Burgum, which I'll get into later. But Pence has the personality of mayonnaise. Like
without the kick.
Goes well. Yeah. Like goes decently with a lot of things, but is useless by itself and kind of disgusting. Like it's a good background thing. Like,
Sure. Yeah.
Like you would never make a sandwich with just mayonnaise. That would be disgusting. But you put mayonnaise on like cheese and ham, and like what I'm saying is that
he's the vice president of sandwiches is what you're saying.
Exactly. He's like, he is the quintessential vice president of an administration that hogs all of the attention. Like when the president, who's the head of the administration, hogs all of the attention. And I think that that's pretty much why Trump agreed to choose him, because he's so boring and relatively inoffensive.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when he's by himself, he's just kind of there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like he didn't say anything of substance. It was just talking point after talking point after platitude after cliche after, I'm for good things and against bad things, and I'm for America and America is good and I love America and yay. Like it was just so stale.
I agree. He spoke for the most time. He spoke for 12 and a half minutes of debate time. And and he didn't say anything.
I'm surprised by that because I don't find anything that he said memorable.
I agree. Yeah. And he was asked a very, so Michael points about him. He was asked a very specific pointed question about whether his administration may have played a part in the kind of housing, homelessness, crime crisis that's facing the country right now. And he didn't even say no. He didn't answer the question at all. And this was, I think this is to your point, Nathan, is that he didn't answer any question directly. He just pivoted every question to whatever the talking point was that he wanted to say. So rather than saying no, my administration didn't, we are the toughest on crime ones or anything like that, he just tries to talk about defunding the police and all that and all that stuff, which is silly because didn't happen.
Yeah.
And the violent crime rates are up more in conservative cities than Democratic cities. But all that aside, all of he was just pivots. He would just pivot to whatever talking point it was. And yeah, he didn't say anything of interest the whole time. I literally, again, I was watching at 1.5 speed and he was still talking too slowly.
Yeah.
And there was one moment where he stops the moderators because they were asking all the candidates about whether Mike Pence made the right decision on January 6th with certifying the vote. And this was a classic, do you just support general democratic principles things? And he was so talking points based and so canned that he literally stops the moderators and is I have a point to make about this. I'm going to say it, to spend 45 seconds or a minute saying absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
It was, I was paying rapt attention. I was this is your moment, dude. You took all the spotlight on you to make a point about how, you did the right thing on January 6th. And it was literally God, America, Constitution. I'm so boring.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah. Speaking of boring, let's talk about Scott.
Oh my God.
If Mike Pence has the personality of mayonnaise, Tim Scott has the personality of stale mayonnaise. He's at the point where he doesn't even go well with anything.
Yeah.
He's just man. In fact, honestly, stale mayonnaise might be more exciting than Tim Scott.
At least it's got a zest if it's gone bad.
At least it's got a zest to it. At least it's going to make you, I mean, I just, God, talking point after talking point after talking point after just rehearsed talking point with no fucking substance. Mm-hmm. It was just I mean, it was Kevin McCarthy's Twitter page, basically.
Yeah. It was absurd.
It's like he went through Kevin McCarthy's Twitter page for a day and just memorized every tweet and just put them in there when appropriate.
Yeah.
It was, and sometimes when inappropriate as well.
Mm-hmm.
It was, man, what a forgettable performance and what a joke.
Yeah.
What a joke of a performance.
I agree. All of his points were very old school Republican, very boring. They just didn't say very much. And his points were not interesting. He didn't get any attention really. He was really, and most importantly, I think I just kept spotting all the lies.
Yeah.
Even more, every single point he made was just dripping in falsehood. It was remarkable. And you could catch it because of how slow and little he said.
Yeah.
So you could really dig into how false everything he was saying was. And it was just who is this for? Why are you up
Yeah.
here?
Like, at least when Pence would lie, he said it in, his endearing, rehearsed politician-y way and that soft voice to where you could almost be like, oh, you're lying to me, but you're kind of cute. Like with Tim Scott, I mean, he didn't even put any personality into his lies.
Yeah, exactly.
He just fucking said them.
And he tries to talk about his record, but his record is not good. Like he bragged about like the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. It was like,
Yeah, which by the way,
everybody
you
knows
cannot-
that 80% of the benefit
Yeah.
goes to the wealthiest people after 10 years.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
the fact that that's what you're leading with, buddy. That's
Yeah.
what you're fucking leading with.
Yep.
Like I mean, yeah, like it was extremely forgettable. Not quite as forgettable as Asa Hutchinson.
Oh boy. He was awful. Like, yeah.
And like not even offensively awful,
No.
just like, I mean, and to be fair, because he's a candidate who's at the edge of the stage, he doesn't get as much time to speak.
Yeah. He only spoke for like 7 minutes.
So-
yeah.
So it is very possible that maybe we just think he did really badly because, he didn't really get to speak much. But honestly, when he did speak,
He wasted
again,
Yeah.
he wasted it. Most of the time he just wasted it.
Yeah. I agree.
You
Like
know?
I actually felt really bad for Hutchinson and Burgum because it was like it really felt like they weren't prepared to be there. And it also
Yeah.
felt like the moderators were like, yeah, you're
Well, one thing that's interesting about Burgum is apparently like he had been injured or something and he
Mhm,
was on
yeah.
some drug while he was doing the debate.
yeah, that really makes sense.
I forget the specifics of it, but like he had hurt himself and he was on some drug, so that's why he was a little loopy.
Gotcha. That really reflected in his opening statement. His like intro was absolute gibberish.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas Hutchinson's like they didn't even ask him a question. Like usually they ask questions of the candidates and then the candidates will turn that into an opening statement of some kind. And Hutchinson, they literally just said, and Governor Hutchinson, and then he made his opening statement. That was it.
Yeah.
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 He does have the dubious criticism. He was the person that made the first criticism of Trump on the stage.
That is true.
It took 45 minutes before anybody criticized Trump, and it was so fucking limptic. Like that's the other side of this dubious claim is that he literally said it starts at the top with the respect for our justice system that a former president who's under indictment has undermined by attacking judges. That a former president, like you're not even going to name him, you're not even going to talk about him.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, am I allowed to say this? It was embarrassing.
It was forgettable. In terms of Burgum, so here is my hot take on Burgum.
Okay.
And you're going to think that I'm not serious when I first say this, but I'm actually serious, and I'll explain why.
Mm-hmm.
Burgum won the debate. And here's why I'm saying that. All right? None of these candidates are ever going to be president.
Okay.
None of them.
Yeah.
All right. The person who's going to win the nomination is going to be Trump.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I cannot see any reality in which it's not Trump. Even if he does get indicted, he has enough support in the primary for his supporters just to
He
not
had
give
enough
a shit.
support on that stage.
Yeah. Yeah. He's going to be the nominee.
Yeah.
None of these people are running to actually be president.
Mm-hmm.
The best any of them could possibly hope to get is vice president. Ramaswamy, too interesting.
Yeah.
He's not, Ramaswamy probably wants to be vice president. That's why he, is emphatic in his defenses of Trump.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, Ramaswamy, you're just too interesting.
Yeah.
All right. You're too charismatic. You're too energetic. Trump's never going to pick you.
Mm-hmm.
He sure as hell is never going to pick Pence because he thinks that Pence betrayed him. He's not going to pick Haley because, Haley's actually criticized him. He's not going to pick Meatball Ron because, he hates Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, totally.
he Scott has been too critical of Trump in order for him to ever pick Scott. Obviously, Christie's been too critical. Obviously, Hutchinson has been too critical. Burgum, on the other hand, he didn't criticize Trump. He didn't say anything super offensive. He's just an old-timey, semi-likable Midwestern governor who is the perfect person to just kind of be there, right? To not really say anything, not really do anything, to just kind of be there. And if we look at this debate from the point of view of none of these people are ever going to be president, so what's the next best thing? Well, probably vice president. Then I would say that Burgum comes out on top with that. All right. If I'm a Trump advisor, and I know that Trump is never going to pick somebody who might outshine him in any way, or might even approach outshining him, and I know that I want to pick somebody that's relatively inoffensive, that's not going to piss people off, and not only that, but someone from the Midwest to boot, which is what Trump desperately needs in order to win, then I'd be advising Trump, hey, you should pick Burgum.
So you're
Burgum
saying
should
that
be your vice president.
by being like the most corpse-like of anyone on the stage.
That is exactly what I'm saying.
That
is exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, he's the happiest one on the stage because he's high. Like, that's how you win.
No, I think that I think that the best any of these people can hope to get is vice president, and the person who's most likely to get vice president is Burgum. I'm not saying he's going to get vice president. I'm saying that of the people on that stage, he's most likely to.
Interesting. Wow.
So Burgum's the big winner.
Yeah, there you go. I realized that we have talked almost not at all about Ron DeSantis, who's currently, at least like second in the polls.
Oh yeah, he was up there.
He was up there. Honestly, what I have in my notes is what's with his awkward little smile. That's all I got. That's all I really got from that guy.
I mean, his advisors told him that he needs to try to be more likable.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, you know what people like? Smiles. Here's one. I'm doing this smile, you see?
It's like, no, less smiling.
Yeah, it's as if they were like, okay, when you finish a point, you have to then smile. And it's exactly what he did. He followed his instructions.
I mean, the thing that he kept doing was he kept doing this thing where a question would be asked or there'd be a conversation and be like, hey, this is all a useless conversation. We need to be talking about the important things. And then he would talk about some culture war garbage.
Yes, totally. He is a complete one-trick pony. He literally turned a question about climate change into a point about corporate media and how biased they are in their purporting.
Which, by the way, every single person on that stage was praising him for that because he saved them from having to answer a really awkward question.
Yeah.
So I guarantee you that every single person on that stage was thinking, oh, thank God, I don't have to actually answer that. Except Ramaswamy, who was dumb enough to actually answer it.
You're like, oh, rake, I'll step on that. Yeah. I just thought it was crazy. He was, your point is exactly right. He was like, shut up, stop talking about these policies. We have to talk about what really matters. Getting trans kids out of our schools and like, la, 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 la. Getting rid of the Department of Education. Can we talk about how fucking crazy it is that there were multiple people advocating for getting rid of the
Pence was
department?
talking about it.
Yeah.
Pence, the supposed moderate, who is definitely not a moderate, was talking about getting rid of the Department of Education.
Like, what did they ever do to you? Like, and abolishing teachers' unions, like, they are gunning for American schools. They just want to destroy them.
Yeah. Like, considering how fucking horrible conditions are for teachers in America, you're really going to go after the fucking teachers union? Like,
they have the perfect solution, Nathan. They're going to be tough on crime, so our jails will be full of people. And you know what schools need for teaching kids? People. So we can force them for 13 cents an hour. We can force the prisoners to teach the kids.
That's perfect. That's a great idea.
And they have to say only the things you let them say. But it's not a violation of their civil rights, right? Because they're criminals already. So that's the big plan.
You know what? I think that you're giving them too much credit, because that might actually work.
Okay, so closing
Like,
thoughts.
that's a smarter plan than any of them came up with.
About the
Closing
debate?
thoughts. So, like I said, I think in terms of actually getting something out of this, ultimately, I think Burgum's the most likely to actually get something out of it in terms of maybe being vice president. If we're talking about in terms of likelihood of potentially winning, I would say that Haley improved those chances the most.
Mhm.
DeSantis didn't fuck them up terribly.
Yeah, which is really
Ramaswamy, which is definitely a win for him. Ramaswamy, as bad as he came across to a lot of people, he did give himself some name recognition.
Yeah, and he's the
which I think
chaos
is-
candidate. And
Yeah,
then
is
the
the
Trump
most-
base
which
loves
I-
the
yeah.
chaos candidate. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that he benefited from it somewhat. I think that DeSantis did. I think that Haley did. I think Christie, again, you gotta judge these people based on what they're there to do. He wasn't there to actually try to win the debate. He was there to try to kamikaze Trump, and I don't think that he did that well enough.
Yeah.
Like, I think that he missed some really good opportunities to lambaste Trump. And yeah, he missed him.
Yeah.
Scott's a huge loser.
Yeah.
Hutchinson is a huge loser.
Mhm.
That's my take.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I think you're overall. I think you're totally right. I think Haley came across as the policy person, the adult in the room, which was, like, I guess good to see. Although, like, that's definitely appealing to me, and I don't know
Yeah.
how much of the Republican base. Ultimately, I think, like, Vivek's coverage afterwards has been super positive. Like, the whole story of the debate was that he ran the show. I didn't really see that, but I think his name recognition and name ID is definitely, like, improved a lot. And I think the best thing DeSantis could have hoped for was not getting totally dragged through the mud, which I think he did effectively. But I think it's just a matter of time before his campaign just totally runs out of gas.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if, like, Haley and Vivek gained some momentum over the next few months. Ultimately, though, like, I don't know exactly what everybody gets out of this in the near term. In terms of, like, long-term political prospects, I think Vivek is the youngest, the wealthiest, the person most likely to come back around.
Yeah, I agree with that.
In, like, 2028 or something like that. And the person that on that stage, like, makes me, honestly most nervous from a policy perspective. So thank you for tuning in for this very special episode of The Perspectrum. And now we'll end our episode as we usually do with our highlights. So Nathan, what's your highlight this week?
Well, Michael, you know what my highlight is. Starfield.
Starfield.
It finally, early access started last night. I finally got to play it.
How is it?
And there's definitely some things I need to get a feel for, because like it's a Bethesda game. There's a lot of crafting. There's a lot of there's even more elements in this than there has been in any Bethesda Game Studios game ever. So like it's definitely one that I'm gonna have to get a feel for. But my first impressions are like, it's fucking awesome. Like, it's
Nice.
I am so excited about it.
Sweet. That's awesome.
Yep. What about you, Mike? What's your highlight?
I think so. I've been, like, working towards a big meeting at work for the last couple of weeks, and that happened yesterday. And it went overall pretty well. And honestly, that's as much as I was hoping for. So I think that's my highlight.
Nice.
Well, cool. And now we'll thank all the people that make this show possible. So thank you to Jerry DeViller, Fade Out Scoop, Kyle Shaska, Taylor Bloom, and Tobias Janssen for being patrons and supporting the show. And if you want to be a patron, you can go to patreon.com/theperspectrum and throw us a couple bucks and help keep us in business. And if you want to see us in video, we have a YouTube channel. You can search The Perspectrum on YouTube. And thank you to Kayla for all they do to make this show possible as our editor. And thank you, dear listener, for listening to The Perspectrum. And you'll hear from us again next week.